Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. I'm Kelly Birmingham. This is a 25-year look back across my career. It's 27 years. 2023 marks my 20th year being certified as a BCBA. Gosh.
Yay.
And as always with me, glad to have you back, as my partner in crime, Jen Lucero, mom to Dylan and Ethan. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
So today's topic came from you and I having a conversation the other day where we were losing our minds.
Yep, we're going off.
We're going off. Yep. And we said, well, let's do what we do and turn that into a podcast.
Mhm.
And we have aptly named this podcast, We Feel Like Frauds.
Yep, basically.
Yep. Some people call it imposter syndrome. I've heard it called different things. I just straight up feel like a fraud
Yep.
sometimes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. So here I am, right? Certified as a BCBA 20 years. It was 2003. It'll be the end of 2023. It'll be 20 years. Been doing this, hit my 28th year. So I've been doing this a very long time. I've, just did a podcast about being a dinosaur in the industry. I have a lot of friends that, we've been doing this over 20 years. I'm stepmom to a young woman on the autism spectrum, right? And let's talk about you.
Mhm. So,
All your
yeah,
Share
so,
all your good stuff, not the fraud part yet. Like what
okay.
we fancy ourselves somewhat of experts at this point.
Mhm. So, I am a director for Special Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
I got about, I guess, 17 years now at background for special events, for fundraising, worked for Autism Speaks for several years,
Yep.
worked for TACA, worked moderate to severe class, special ed classroom autism for school district for a very long time. And then mom to Dylan, who's severely impacted by autism, just turned 23, and then have another awesome son too, Ethan, who is about to graduate from college in a couple months, and he just turned 21.
Yeah.
But I am a fraud.
I mean, people seek us out all the time. You were
Uh-huh.
sharing me with a story about a friend called you for help. I have a
Uh-huh.
family friend who is getting their um whose sister passed away, and now she's found herself conservator of a
Mhm.
a 40-year-old woman. People call us all the time, you and I, for help, like especially in our local community. People
Definitely.
reach out to me nationally to do trainings and workshops. And I would say most of the time, you and I, like, we also have our shit together pretty well, right? We're
Mhm.
organized women, we're working women,
Yep.
but damn, last week sucked.
Yeah, we just, sometimes, no matter what, we're human. And a lot of times I think you get to your breaking point, especially when you try so hard, both professionally and personally, and then you feel like, kind of sometimes, outside factors, but like whatever you're trying to do, like just is not working. And it makes you feel like a loser.
Yeah. And so, I won't, to protect my stepdaughter's privacy, she doesn't like me to share some things. She tells me I can share, and some she would not want me to share, but she is having some health concerns and things that are within her control in theory,
Mhm.
right? Like she could change some behavior that would make her not have health concerns. And it's this hard balance, right? Because as a behavior analyst, like I know contingencies to change behavior. I know like things to do and not do. But what you don't think about is, we find ourselves in this balance. And I think a lot of people do, parents do this, right? And as a BCB, I know all the right things, right? That if she changed some things about her behavior, things would improve. On
Mhm.
the other hand, she is 33. She lives in her own apartment, right? She has lived out of the home for, I think, 7 years now,
That's amazing.
right? Maybe 8. And so it's been a give and take with some things, right? Like she is not conserved, because she doesn't qualify. Like, we had a psychologist, we met with them, they said no, they would not grant us conservatorship because of her cognition and her skills. But at the same time, you know, it's a struggle because she's smack in the middle of that spectrum, right? And she makes poor decisions about her health, and you know, we can't control everything. She wants to live a certain way, and we have to sort of balance between, like, do we allow her to live a certain way and be happy, but also be unhealthy? And so I was like, shit.
Yeah. Of
And
course. It's
right.
stressful.
And you know, there are times like for Dylan where all of a sudden Dylan is like getting pissed again and trying to, you
Mm.
know, have some, you know, pretty severe aggressive behaviors towards you, and not sleeping again. And we did a whole podcast on how to help kids go to sleep better. And then sometimes it's like, shit, it's just not working.
That's why I think it's ironic. I almost like feel like there's times where I set myself up for the kill where like I'm either trying to guide someone else or you know, or I think it's going good or we talk about stuff or and then next thing I know, it's almost like, is he listening somewhere? Like, you know, it's like, here we go. Yeah, I think it is hard. And it is frustrating. I mean, I sometimes, you know, with him lately, he's been so like OCD and so repetitive
Yeah.
about stuff. And it's hard because, you know, part of me is like, I know, like, if I give in and just like, you know, keep telling him over and over what he wants me to do, you know, that and it's just repeating stuff he's saying, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I'm like, "Why is he doing this right now?" You know, is it,
Mhm.
you know, he's, you know, in treatment for, you know, something recently diagnosed? Is it the meds? Like, I think we, both you and I, are always trying to figure out why, but then it's just it makes you feel, like, helpless, you know,
Yeah.
and just, like, you know, I don't know, like, I like, there's days I feel like I talk again, like you said, people seek advice from me and think I
Yep.
got it all together, and, like, there's days when I'm like, "I have no idea what's going on," and
Mhm.
I'm so burnt out, and I just feel like I'm clueless, like, you know, like,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with my own life and, like, with him, you know what I mean? And it's
Yep.
the same like you're saying with her, like, you know, I get frustrated because you know, whether he's, at, like, a day you know, adult day program or services or whatever, you know, sometimes they're like, "Oh, well, you know, we wanna make sure he's doing what he wants to do," and you and I had a conversation about that, like, it's like, "No, like, I don't want Dylan to run the show," like,
Yep.
and he is concerned, and, like, you know,
Mhm.
like, I don't want him calling me when I'm trying to work, or he shouldn't just decide, like, "I'm done for the day and I wanna go home," like, that's not reality. I mean, you know, Ethan, my other son, couldn't do that when he was in school or at
Right.
work, just be like, "Hey, you know what? I think I'm done for the day. Can you just call my mom and have her pick me up?" Like, you know, so I don't know, but it's just it definitely there's stretches of time where I do feel like, you know, people think I'm so good at this, and I sometimes feel like a total failure, like I am not. Don't listen to me. No. Or it's the thing like they always talk about teachers that you can you know, I'm very good at working with other people's you know, kids or young adults, like in many different aspects, you know, whether work or volunteering for surfers healing or you know, just or just interacting with, you know, other people on the spectrum. But sometimes, you know, I feel like I'm absolutely clueless when it comes to my own situation.
Yeah. Sorry, my dog's popping off. Do.
Okay.
Um, and that's the thing. And I know we've done a lot of podcasts on it, just like the flavor of this about like it's easier when it's not your own child. And right. And so as a BCBA, It is
Mhm.
so much easier for me when it's not my own child. And I never, like, I can remember Bill telling me this when we were first, we were dating and we were deciding we were going to move forward. And he used to say to me, um, you don't, when it's your own kid, it's hard, Kelly. You can't see through it all. And he would say, like, I need other people to tell Melanie to do things sometimes because she won't listen to me.
Yep.
As a BCBA, I actively said to him, well, that can't be the case. I'm like, it, because it has to be on the parent, right? It's generalization. It can't be the BCB, the behavioral therapist delivering all the instruction. It can't be like, it has to transition over to the parent at some point. We're trained in that. That's how we talk. Like, that's all, that's everything. Otherwise, people would have behavior therapists for the rest of their lives.
Yep.
But now that I'm in the shit of it,
Yeah,
so
for sure.
wait a minute. There are times when, and as I'm going to talk behavior analytical now, like there's learned history of, and I used to say this to you all the time, like these kids, they can't communicate everything they think and feel.
Mhm.
And so they express all that frustration on the ones they love and trust the most. I used to say that to you all the time, right? Like you
Yeah.
take the brunt of it because you're mom. But when you're in it and you're getting the brunt, like as a behavior analyst, and when my stepdaughter's going off on me or refusing to make choices that are healthier, you feel helpless,
Mhm.
right? And then that's where I'm like, I feel like a fraud, like I should know what to do right now.
Mhm.
But this like confluence of this learned history of these kids or adults, when you add in the not being able to communicate, you add in the guilt of being a parent and feeling bad of not meeting their needs. It gets all messed up. And then I
Yeah.
feel like a fraud.
And I think too, where, and I think it's usually most people's cases, a lot of time, like there's the fraud, the guilt thing, we know that there's underlying medical issues,
Yep.
and yet, like, there's a certain part where you're like, okay, like he's probably in pain, or like you're coming up,
Yep.
not to say excuses, but at the same time it's so frustrating because you're just like, why, like, I get it, like you used to say that to me and stuff, but part of me is like, well, that sucks because, like, if I'm the one he trusts the most and loves the most, like why is he choking me out and beating me up and breaking stuff? Like,
Right.
like it's like, well, that ain't cool. Like, you know what I mean? Like in
Yep.
my head, I'm just like, why is this? I mean, I know analytically, I know, like, I know why, but
Mhm.
it still doesn't make it easy.
And that's the part, Jen, because it doesn't make it easy. But let's talk about that because you and I always dust ourselves off
Yeah.
and get back to it. But like, what's your process? So I know that I have a process where
Mhm.
Bill and I do parent together well. But there are some times when he doesn't tell me stuff. And
Mhm.
he says, I don't want you to stress about this and feel bad because I get down on myself as a BCBA in this field and say, why don't I know how to do this? And
Mhm.
he's trying to protect me a little bit because I beat myself up and I go,
Yeah.
shit, I know how, like, what are the contingencies, right? Like, let's analyze this behavior. And then I tend to put procedures. I go to a programming. That's just how I think. I go, all right, we're going to program this. We're going to talk about antecedent strategies and what are we going to do before and what's the behavior we want to change and what are the consequences and reinforcement. And sometimes we put in punishment kinds of procedures,
Yeah.
right? And where we say, like, if you don't do this, there's a loss of this.
Mhm.
And then so I have to kind of work through it and I go, that's my safe spot where I go, okay, if I can program this. But that's not as a parent how Bill thinks, right? So he's like, what do you mean program? And so then we both have to like separate for a few days, not separate, but like not talk about it for a few days. And then I formulate my plan and I type it up because that's how I'm trained. And I present the plan to him. And then he
Mhm.
takes the plan and then he puts like what feels comfortable as a parent on it and his history with Melanie over the years. And Bill is someone who follows through on a lot of things, but there's no question there are things that he won't follow through on because he feels bad as a parent and guilty. And Melanie knows that, frankly. right? And that
Yeah,
is
I think they're smart. I think they
a
definitely
hard
know.
pattern to change.
Yeah, for sure. The one thing that's
What do you do? How do you, that's how I get myself back into,
I go hide and cry. Just kidding. um, I mean, for myself, like, I'm the same way where I have to sit down and think about everything and write it. I write it out too. What has been happening? Like, what is the
Mhm.
what starts it? If I know, is there a pattern, which there usually is,
Yep.
and then how have I responded already? Has that worked? And then what are different strategies that I can put in place first to hopefully have like that behavior not happen in the first place, but then if it does, what is my game plan for myself, but also for others,
Yeah.
to deal with the behavior. But then just personally, I really try to have time to I've been better about, especially when things are intense, like if I do have help, if I have respite or whatever, or somebody's hanging out with them, or and I'm not working and I have time, I've been trying to like do something for myself. Like I've always been really into like award season and after I lived in LA forever and worked for Disney, so, like, I try to go to a movie, and then I walk around, and I try to, like, think about things and, like, think about things in a positive way, and I think also it helps me is, when I think about and the things I am doing right, like Ethan, like, even though things have been super crazy,
Yeah.
for a long time, like, I try to, like, look at other aspects of my life and be like, "Wow," like, "Look where how he's doing," and, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And feel, like, positive about that. Because like, if you just sit there and focus and obsess about, like, all the bad stuff that's
Yep.
happening, like, that's when I go into fraud mode and, like, putting myself down.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting. I think wallowing in the fraud moments, like I was walking Dewey, my dog, while you and I were talking, and we were
Yeah.
both just like, this is like, what the hell?
Mhm.
And I think what's hard for me is being in that space. And because I am someone who thinks I'm really good at what I do, and it's hard to be in the space. But what I'm learning is I do have to be in that space a little bit. It's usually a few days instead of fighting it, because once I'm through it and then I go, okay, let me really think about this now, I usually can find an answer. And I'm incredibly sad about the number of families that I'm encountering during the pandemic whose kids now don't leave the house.
Mhm.
They're stuck in their house. They are in full control of the household.
Mhm.
It's obviously the more severely impacted families I'm talking about, but also not also some less impacted families, but the kids who have anxiety, right? And they're all home, they're in their house on their computers or their iPads doing nothing. And that's where everyone's at right now. And I keep hearing from families this like fraud scenario, but they're basically like, we just needed everyone to feel happy and safe.
Mhm.
And we've been complacent with some things with Melanie ourselves, which has got us to this point where she's not healthy. And we could have done some things, but we were tired and we didn't do it.
I think that's a huge point. It's like there's times, and I think my mom says this, I say it. There are literally times where I got a line that I say where I'm like, I say, I'm literally just trying to make it through the day.
Yeah.
Like there are times like that. And you brought up a good point. Like one of my big things, and this is where I struggle with all doing services and certain components. I don't be names. I found out a lot of people actually have been about our podcast. So I don't want to be shouting out agencies or anything, but like I find it's weird that I get pushback that I am like, Dylan has to be in a program. He has to be out of the house,
Yep.
have to be like, and he does like, set up days of, even if it's a couple hours, like, he needs to go places out in the public and all that. Because I do think that's really become a challenge for like most people. But one thing
Yeah.
you said is so true, which is, I think, again, a fraud thing and like a guilt thing and cause problems and other areas of my personal life, is that Dylan sometimes he thinks he controls this house.
Yep.
Like downstairs he's like, this is my space. Like this big ass TV downstairs is mine, and don't you even try to change the channel.
Yep.
Or like even the stuff in the fridge. Okay, here's a total like loser guilt thing. Talk about fraud. We got to the point like, and this was years ago, but he was taking other people's stuff or dumping it.
Yep.
So one year for Christmas, when Ethan was still in high school, I think I got him his own little mini fridge. But then we got to the point where we have like a mini fridge in our bedroom too. And I'm like, this is like ridiculous.
Yeah.
But like, and then it is the thing of like, you're just trying to get through it. But then it just makes you feel like, oh my gosh, like, who is in control? Like,
Yep.
like this is crazy. But like you said, I feel the same way too. Sometimes like I feel pretty confident and strong that I am really good at what I do.
Yep.
And like when I get home, I'm like a little hot mess,
right? But this is where I'm going to circle us around, because this is why you and I are not frauds, because we feel like frauds. We're in it, but we're deep in the fact that we know, like we're still going to set our boundaries, right? And maybe we're giving in on some things to get through the day. But you and I and most people and families and BCBAs listening to this, when you're in it, it's so hard. But when you can step back and go, okay, wait a minute, what am I willing, and it comes down to like, what am I willing to accept and what am I not willing to accept? And that's different for every family, right? And as BCBAs, we have to help families. And then we come to that decision and say, okay, I'm willing to accept this. Maybe I'm going to have a mini fridge, right? And we gave in on some things for Melanie where we're like, okay, we're willing to accept those things, and I'm protecting her privacy, so not sharing. But then we also said we're not willing to accept this. And now what's our plan? And that's where I feel like we can come full circle and say, we're not frauds.
Yeah. We're pretty cool.
But we have our fraud days.
Yes. Well, it's funny because we tend to have the same time frame when we're both feeling that way. So maybe that's a good thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We can talk each other off the ledge,
And that's where we come back to when we very first started this podcast. We're on season 3 now, where we talked about having your tribe, right? And you've got to have your tribe to bounce off. And when you're in the fraud days, that you can wallow in it, but then take a step back and go, okay, what am I willing to accept or not accept? And as BCBAs working with families, have that conversation, right? Like, what are you willing, what's okay for you right now and what's not okay for you right now? And then plugging along towards improving the what's not okay.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, we're back out of the fraud day.
Yeah. We'll see what happens next week.
Everyone stay tuned. Bye, everyone.
Bye.